If you're hearing this right now, it's not by chance. You didn't just scroll here. You were summoned. This moment is marked for you. Out of the noise, out of the chaos, this word is reaching your soul because heaven has an appointment with your destiny. Let me tell you something powerful. You've been carrying weight others can't see. You've smiled through storms, stayed silent in struggle, kept showing up even when your hands were empty, and the world may have overlooked you, but God has not. You are not average. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are chosen. And the warfare you've walked through, it wasn't punishment. It was preparation. You weren't buried. You were planted. Right here, right now, something in your life is about to shift. The delay had purpose. The silence had instruction. The drought had design. And now, the release is near. Not just money in your hand, but peace in your mind, fire in your spirit, and clarity in your calling. This message isn't just motivation. It's a mirror. It's confirmation that you're not crazy for believing, not foolish for holding on, not weak for waiting. You've been positioned by divine strategy, and this is your moment of activation. So lean in. Grab every word like it was spoken straight from heaven to your spirit, because it was. And before we go any deeper, drop a 55 in the comments if your soul is ready. That's not just a number, it's a signal, a spiritual yes, a prophetic response to the gates of heaven that says, I'm ready, I'm here, I receive it. Because what's coming isn't just blessing, it's legacy. It's not just breakthrough, it's a whole new blueprint. Now breathe in, let it settle, and let's go. The journey you've been on is about to make sense. Some lessons are only taught when comfort is stripped away, and routine no longer works. When everything familiar fades and all your fallback plans collapse, what's left is a classroom where only divine truth remains. This isn't punishment, it's precision. It's where God invites you to unlearn what the world taught you to depend on and rebuild a foundation rooted entirely in Him. Feel God's love stirring within you. Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You were made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. See, the absence of financial ease wasn't some oversight from heaven. It was a decision, a deliberate pause. Because before abundance can be placed in your hands, your heart must be trained to recognize where sustenance truly comes from. If your confidence was stored in a paycheck, in applause, in certainty, it had to be reset. Not out of cruelty, but because your next season will require you to operate from a different source entirely. In that stretch of barely enough, something powerful was happening. You didn't just run out of resources, you were being rerouted to the well that never runs dry. You learned to wake up and ask for daily strength. You learned to stand even when the ground felt uncertain. You learned how to move when the map disappeared and only your spirit had the compass. This wasn't about money, it was about mastery, the kind of spiritual maturity that doesn't flinch in famine because it remembers the manna. You are being trained to recognize provision in the unlikeliest of places, to thank God not when it was easy, but when it was empty, to plant kindness even when your own harvest hadn't shown up yet. And here's the real miracle. Your faith didn't fade, it grew sharper. It got louder than the silence. It began to pull strength from the unseen. That's why you can be trusted with what's next. Because what's forming in you is bigger than bills. It's legacy, it's impact, it's eternal influence wrapped in earthly stewardship. When others see lack, Heaven sees a vessel being hollowed out just right so it can carry glory without spilling it. You weren't neglected. You were hand-molded. Every door that didn't open, every wallet that stayed empty, every not yet was designed to detox your soul from shallow trust. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. You're not behind schedule. You've been hand-shaped by divine timing. The discomfort built discernment. The lack grew discipline. The season you thought would break you was secretly building spiritual muscle for mountains you'll move later. Now that you no longer bow to material safety, now that your roots go deeper than results or recognition, heaven is about to trust you with more than you imagined. But this time, you won't cling to it. You'll carry it, because now you know who holds you. And that is wealth no system can steal. When the stage lights go out and there's no audience to impress, something sacred begins. That season, when the checks stop coming and your plans lose traction, isn't meant to shame you, it's designed to shape you. The refining doesn't begin when you're celebrated. It starts when you're stripped. And there's no hiding in that space. You can't cover lack with charm or patch hunger with ambition. Everything fake falls away. That's the place where real humility is born. Not the kind that whispers insecurity, but the kind that knows who's in charge when the bank account is low and the lights stay on anyway. That depth of humility isn't a side effect. It's the assignment. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being preserved. See, pride won't survive where daily bread is a prayer, not a purchase. And in this chapter, heaven is reworking you, not to embarrass you, but to anchor you. When status can't save you, when applause is silent, when your own strength gives out, you learn what can actually hold you. You learn how to kneel without being forced, how to love people who can't do anything for you, how to walk into a room with nothing to prove because you already know who provides. This isn't about financial numbers. This is about spiritual posture. You're not being lowered, you're being grounded. You're being taught how to appreciate water before the well runs deep, how to be generous when you don't have surplus, how to be faithful when no one's clapping. That's not weakness. It's divine wisdom wrapped in restraint. You also see who stays when your hands are empty, who still checks in when you have nothing to give. And more importantly, you discover that even when all else is silent, God doesn't leave. In fact, He draws closer. When the world walks out, the Holy One steps in, and you begin to hear with your heart what you never could with your head. These moments are not to be despised. They are your deep training in sacred endurance. In those days when you stretched $5 like a feast, when you wore the same coat and held your head high, when you gave even when it hurt, you were sowing something weighty. That's not just survival, that's spiritual currency. And now, you're not just humble, you're trustworthy. The kind of trustworthy that won't be blinded by blessing. The kind of trustworthy that won't need to show off because your scars already speak. You've passed the hidden test, and heaven takes notice when the proud fall silent and the humble stay the course. So when the overflow begins to chase you down, and it won't distort you, it will deploy you, because you're not just a vessel of provision, you're a steward of purpose. You won't cling to the gift. You'll carry the message. You won't flash your increase. You'll fund impact. Doors that ignored you will now open wide. But you'll walk through them differently, lighter, wiser, grounded, not to be praised, but to serve, not for titles, but for transformation. This was never about being without. It was about becoming enough in the eyes of God. And now, you're ready, not because you climbed, but because you bowed. That posture, that's what lifts you. That's why heaven is moving now. There's something holy about the moments when your hands are empty, yet your heart still says yes. Those seasons don't just test your endurance, they teach you how to handle destiny without waste. This is more than survival. This is schooling, a divine apprenticeship in responsibility, not just over money, but over thought, over time, over the very breath in your lungs. In a world that equates wealth with worth, scarcity in the spirit realm often signals elevation in progress. What looks like lack on the outside is actually a sharpening of your inner capacity, not just to receive, but to manage. Because favor isn't just released to those who ask, it's entrusted to those who are ready. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. When your next meal isn't guaranteed and you still choose to give, you're not losing, you're learning. When you map out your week with more vision than budget, you're not being foolish, you're being forged. It's in the little decisions, buy this or wait, speak now or pray longer, that maturity is born. You start realizing that self-control is a form of strength, that discipline is a declaration of faith. This kind of instruction isn't written in books, it's written on your bones. You feel it every time you make peace with postponement. You sense it when you stop measuring success by size and start measuring it by obedience. And slowly, your perspective shifts. You stop craving excess. You start cultivating excellence. And that's when God knows He can trust you, not just with more, but with meaning. Because blessing without blueprint breeds disaster. So heaven pauses the overflow until your hands know how to hold with honor, until your heart won't trade devotion for digits, until your habits match your hope. See, this process isn't random, it's divine math. God lets you live with the little so you can master the stretch, not to break your spirit, but to build your stewardship muscle. You begin to notice the power of planning. You learn to say no without guilt. You become the one who sets boundaries, not because you're selfish, but because you're finally wise enough to protect your purpose. You quit looking for shortcuts, you stop praying for jackpots, and you start investing in long-term harvest. Not the flashy kind, but the kind that feeds generations. Because what's being formed in you isn't greed, it's governance. You're learning the weight of influence. And you're realizing that true wealth isn't what you spend, it's what you sustain, what you steward with integrity when no one's looking, when you start tithing from tight places, when you budget not out of fear, but out of faith, when you stop idolizing income and start prioritizing impact. Heaven takes note, and that's when the shift begins. The tables start turning, not because you demanded it, but because you were developed for it. And now, you're not chasing provision, you're carrying purpose. Step beyond the screen. Join, and help light the way for others. This next season isn't about looking successful. It's about living sent. It's about breaking the back of financial dysfunction in your bloodline, about becoming the lender and not the borrower, about funding vision, not just fantasizing about it. You're no longer just a recipient, you're a reservoir, trusted with heaven's tools to build something that lasts. What looked like a detour of lack was actually a masterclass in dominion. And now, you're qualified, not because you're rich, but because you're ready. Not every delay in life is denial. Some are detours designed to preserve what's sacred in you. When the path narrows and the doors won't budge, it doesn't always mean you're being rejected. It could mean you're being rescued. There's a kind of protection that doesn't look like safety. It looks like struggle, and it's only in hindsight that you see the mercy that wrapped itself in the disguise of lack. When heaven doesn't release what you asked for, it's not questioning your worth. It's preserving your assignment. Certain seasons of drought are not about punishment. They're about positioning, because premature provision can invite misplaced identity. If you had gotten what you prayed for too soon, it might have buried your purpose beneath your comfort. So there you were, walking tight ropes with empty pockets and tired eyes, thinking God forgot. But he hadn't. He was insulating you from the noise, quieting the clutter, narrowing your world so you could finally hear what truly mattered. You weren't deprived, you were being detoxed, scrubbed free of applause addiction, separated from false security, loosened from the grip of material distractions so the eternal could get your attention. In that stripped season, you stopped performing, you stopped pretending, and something honest began to rise. Your hunger changed, your goals shifted. You weren't chasing fame, you were chasing clarity, not hustling for things, but tuning in for truth. While others built their lives around image, you were in the dark building character. Every no you received was a holy fence around your future. Every not yet was a seal on your soul. What you once called failure was really divine filtration, sifting out the counterfeit so the authentic could flourish. The lack wasn't a signal of rejection. It was a sacred wall, keeping you hidden until your roots ran deep enough to carry weight without wobbling. Heaven was never interested in giving you riches that rob you of your reverence. That's why the checks didn't come when you begged. That's why the doors didn't open when you knocked. Because you were being trained for more than income. You were being fitted for impact. And while you sat wondering why others rose, God was preparing a rise in you that wouldn't self-destruct under pressure. He stripped you of options so you could gain obedience. He limited the overflow to stretch your insight. He reduced your resources so your reliance on Him would multiply. The empty hands were building sacred reflexes, like leaning into prayer instead of panic, like obeying even when there's no reward, like trusting when nothing adds up. It wasn't about stopping your success. It was about saving your soul, because not every gain is growth, and not every offer is ordained. Some open doors lead nowhere worth going, and some treasures are traps in disguise. Now, you're different. You don't flinch at delay anymore. You've seen what shallow success costs, and you're not interested. Your motives are refined. Your discernment is sharp. You're not moved by clout. You're anchored in calling. That quiet season didn't just prepare you, it purified you. And now, the abundance that's coming won't steal your worship. It'll deepen it. What's ahead isn't just about overflow. It's about alignment. It's provision that pushes purpose, resources that serve mission, blessing that builds beyond bank accounts. The storm didn't block your destiny. It preserved it. And when it lifts, because it will, you won't just rise financially, you'll rise faithfully, with vision, with grounding, with the kind of strength that can't be bought but had to be built. And that's why the heavens held it back. Not to punish, but to protect. And not from failure, but from anything that might have succeeded at pulling you off the path you were born to walk. Sometimes, it's not what you have that reveals you, it's what you don't. When everything extra gets peeled away, no titles, no security nets, no applause, what's left tells the truth. That's why your season of lack wasn't a setback. It was a sacred X-ray, a spiritual scan to uncover whether your soul was built on treasure or truth. The heavens allowed your pockets to run dry so your heart could run deep. Not to shame you, but to strip away every false measurement the world tried to place on your worth. You weren't being punished, you were being purified. Not by fire, but by emptiness. And in that emptiness, the question rang loud in your spirit. Who are you when no one's looking and nothing's working? When the shine wore off and the silence grew thick, you stayed. Not because you had something to gain, but because your faith wasn't built on blessings. It was built on belief. You didn't love because you were being loved. You loved anyway. You weren't generous because you had overflow. You gave from your need. You didn't stay consistent because you had comfort. You stayed because commitment lives in your bones. That's what this process revealed. Not your weakness, but your essence. You prayed when there were no promises. You served when there was no spotlight. You kept your hands lifted, even when your heart felt low. And the heavens took notice, not of how you performed, but of how you remained. Grounded, steady, true. This season wasn't about loss. It was about revealing what can't be lost. Character, conviction, clarity. You were given nothing so you could find everything. Your value was never in the account balance. It was in your backbone. Your yes to God didn't depend on how good life looked. It depended on how good He is. Always. And now something dangerous to darkness has been born in you. Not pride, not ego, but a quiet confidence rooted in survival. You've been through the drought, and you didn't dry up. You've faced closed doors, and you didn't walk away. You've seen empty hands and still chose to worship. So now, when provision comes, and it won't own you. It won't confuse your identity or dilute your calling, because you've already been approved when no one was clapping. You've already passed when no one was watching. You've already been seen by the only one whose opinion seals your future. The next blessing won't be your validation. It'll be your vehicle. You don't need it to prove anything. It'll simply reflect what's already true. You're faithful. You're formed. You're ready. And that wealth? It won't change you. It'll just fund what God already trusted you to carry. You weren't broke to be broken. You were emptied to be entrusted. And because you didn't fold when the account was quiet, you'll flourish when the increase comes. Not to flash it, but to funnel it. Not to rise in status, but to rise in service. Because now you know, when the world gave you nothing, your soul still held everything. And that kind of person, that's exactly who heaven blesses next. Not everything that flows into your life is meant to stay there. And what's coming next? It's not just overflow, it's outpouring. Because you're not being positioned to sit high, you're being positioned to reach wide. This next blessing isn't just about breakthrough, it's about assignment. Favor is finding you, because the mission needs funding. Provision is being released because purpose is calling. This increase that's on the horizon, this shift in your finances, your opportunities, your platform, it's not designed to fatten your lifestyle. It's designed to further the vision. God isn't filling your hands so you can build comfort zones. He's filling your hands so you can build bridges. And those bridges, they'll carry families out of struggle. They'll lead the next generation to safety. They'll fund shelters. They'll launch visions. They'll create doors where there once were only walls. This isn't just wealth. This is kingdom equipment. And He chose you to carry it. Why? Because He saw you when you had nothing and still lifted others. He watched you pray for strangers while your own heart was breaking. You gave when it hurt. You served when no one clapped. You forgave when bitterness made more sense. And that's why He can trust you with more, because He saw your soul stay pure when your surroundings weren't. You are not being called to collect. You are being called to commission. What's headed your way carries weight, not just in numbers, but in purpose. It's not about climbing, it's about covering. You're about to underwrite change, sponsor freedom, push forward people who've been stuck in places you've already been rescued from. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the super thank you button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. And don't be surprised when instructions come with the increase. When you're nudged to pour into projects you didn't plan. When your heart beats harder for causes you used to scroll past. That's not random. That's heaven speaking. That's the Spirit aligning your resources with His rhythm. This is not about building a name. It's about lifting a banner, one that says, God still sees, God still sends, God still multiplies when hearts stay surrendered. You're not being elevated for applause. You're being elevated for assignment. So when the finances hit your hand, when the influence starts rising, when the doors you didn't knock on begin to open, remember, you weren't blessed just to enjoy it. You were trusted to release it, because generosity is no longer optional for you. It's your mantle. You carry the answer now. You are the open hand someone else prayed for. You are the safe space someone else needs. And what's coming next? It's not just abundance, it's activation. You've cried enough to understand that wealth without wisdom is wasted. But now, you've got both. The increase will arrive, yes, but so will clarity. So will conviction. So will divine strategy. You're not being rewarded, you're being equipped. And what you build with it, that's what eternity will remember. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. When you've been through the kind of pressure that should have cracked your mind, and you're still here, not just surviving, but standing. That's not random. That's divine record-keeping in motion. The heavens don't forget the ones who suffer in silence and still smile in surrender. This isn't just a new season, it's your ordained return. Not a return to what was, but a lifting into what was always meant to be. Some call it favor, some call it restoration. But what's really happening? It's divine repayment with interest. Not repayment because you begged for it, but because you bore the weight of the process without letting it crush your purpose. What looked like delay was really divine deposits being stored in your name, accumulating behind the veil. Every unseen yes, every resisted temptation, every seed sown when you had every reason to hoard. It was noted, and now it's being released. Not to stroke your ego, but to reintroduce your assignment. You're not being restored because you need validation. You're being refueled because you're about to move again. This time with authority. The kind that can't be taught, only birthed through fire. What left your life didn't take your destiny. What was withheld didn't void your promise. This isn't about payback in the way the world defines it. This is about divine equity. You've been underestimated by people, but you are being qualified by God. And He's not just returning what was lost, He's reconfiguring your reach. You'll move in spaces you once prayed to enter. You'll carry calm where you used to carry questions. You'll see doors open that never had your name on them, because now they carry your assignment.